You are sitting alone in your car, engine running but destination forgotten. The rain taps steadily against the windshield like a clock ticking down, but time feels irrelevant. Your fists are clenched on the steering wheel, knuckles pale. You just had another conversation, no? Confrontation with someone who does not understand you, dismisses your efforts, or maybe just triggered something raw and ancient inside you. You can tell if you are about to scream, cry, or laugh at the absurdity of how fast peace can turn to rage. But then something strange happens. You do not lash out. You do not explode. You just sit there. And in that stillness, an unsettling thought bubbles to the surface. What if this anger is not a flaw? What if this heat coursing through you is not something to be buried, but a signal, a power source, a mirror? We are taught to be calm, to be composed, to be rational, forgiving, and nice, because anger is dangerous, right? Anger ruins relationships. It leads to violence. It is the emotion of the undisciplined, the unstable, the unevolved. It is something we should suppress, manage, or breathe through. But what if you have been taught to hate one of the most honest emotions you have? What if anger, raw, burning, unapologetic, has a purpose you were never allowed to see? Not as destruction, but as transformation. Now pause for a second. Think back. How many times have you been angry and then immediately told yourself it was wrong to feel that way? How often have you smiled through gritted teeth, nodded in agreement while your inner world screamed in revolt? How many moments of compliance were actually quiet funerals for your own boundaries? We romanticize calm, but calm can be cowardice when it is nothing more than fear dressed in self-control. We glorify forgiveness, but sometimes we are just labeling surrender as virtue. We hide our rage behind spiritual quotes and deep breaths, thinking we are ascending when in truth, we are just avoiding a confrontation with our real selves. And here's the deeper, darker paradox. The more you suppress your anger, the more it owns you. It waits, quietly, like a prisoner in the basement, and when the mask slips, it does not whisper, it erupts. But what if it did not have to be that way? What if you did not have to fear the fire in your chest? What if, and this changes everything, your anger was trying to awaken you, not to lash out, but to finally stand up? See, behind every flash of fury is a violated value. Behind every clenched jaw is a boundary crossed. Behind every how dare they is a forgotten why did not I. Anger reveals what matters to you, more than any noble-sounding mission statement ever could. It is the most honest emotion in your psychological landscape, too primal to lie, too urgent to hide for long. But because society told you it is bad, you buried it. You smiled through injustice. You nodded through betrayal. You applauded mediocrity while your soul screamed for something real. And now, years later, that buried anger is not gone. It has just become harder to recognize. It shows up as procrastination, as people-pleasing, as chronic fatigue that no doctor can explain, as that quiet little voice at night whispering, "This is not who you are supposed to be." So now, let us ask the question that no self-help book dares to. What if anger is not the enemy of growth, but the missing engine of it? What if you have been trying to find your path while cutting off the one emotion designed to carve it open? You do not need to rage at the world. You do not need to punch walls or scream into pillows. But you do need to listen to that ember inside you before it dies into apathy. Because apathy is not peace. Apathy is the funeral of passion. And here's the final unsettling question before we dive deeper, before we tear away the comfortable lies. If your anger had a voice, what would it say you gave up on? Who would it accuse you of becoming? What part of you is it still trying to protect, even after all these years? There is a reason your fists clenched. There is a reason your eyes burned. There is a reason your voice trembled when you tried to be polite in a moment that demanded war. The reason is not weakness. It is memory. It is mission. It is truth trying to break through. And until you understand the hidden power behind that emotion you have been taught to fear, you will never know the full force of who you are. Let us go there. Let us lift the lid on the anger buried in your bones. Let us find the truth behind the fire. Why would something so primal, so visceral, so alive become something we are told to choke down with a smile? Why would a flame that once roared in our ancestors, fueling revolutions and forging new worlds, now be treated like a disease? Because there is a deeper truth. Anger is not just an emotion. It is a signal of sovereignty. And in a world that quietly profits from your compliance, Your obedience, your willingness to get along, that kind of signal is dangerous. Anger reveals where you draw the line. And if you can be made to forget that line, you can be controlled. But to understand why we are so afraid of this emotion, we have to go deeper into the roots of our psychology. And further back, into our very mythology. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And what is more repressed, more collectively dissound, than our own righteous fury? From childhood, we are conditioned subtly and consistently. When you screamed as a baby, someone told you to hush. When you protested as a toddler, someone said don't be difficult. When you challenged injustice in school, you were told you were being disrespectful. And so it begins. Not just the repression of anger, but the rebranding of it. We learned that anger makes us bad, that to feel rage is to be immature, that good people are calm, composed, quiet, forgiving. But what if that is not goodness at all? What if it is a kind of self-erasure disguised as virtue? Jung believed that what we repress does not disappear. It festers. It grows teeth in the dark. And eventually, it bursts forth not as clarity, but as shadow. The shadow self, as he called it, is everything we have rejected in ourselves, every unacceptable urge, every shamed emotion, every denied desire. And anger? That is the crown jewel of the shadow, because it threatens the identity we have been taught to wear. You see, we do not just fear anger because of what it might make us do. We fear anger because of what it reveals, that beneath the image we have crafted of being polite, composed, put together, there is someone raw, powerful, and unwilling to play nice anymore. And that is terrifying, not because it is evil, but because it is true. And truth, in a world built on pretending, is rebellion. Let us turn to philosophy for a moment. The Stoics, often misquoted, did not condemn anger itself. They warned against anger that controls you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it." But the key word here is consequences. He was not saying never feel it. He was saying, feel it consciously, understand its root, don't act blindly, but do not numb blindly either. Modern psychology affirms this. Anger is a secondary emotion. It usually rises to protect something deeper: pain, fear, betrayal, humiliation. It is the armor your nervous system forges in the moment it senses danger. It is your psyche shouting, something is wrong, someone crossed a line. Do something. But what do most of us do? We swallow it. We rationalize it. We self-gaslight. We say, maybe I've reacted. It is not a big deal. I should just let it go. But every time you deny that signal, you disconnect from your internal compass. And over time, you stop trusting yourself. This is not an accident. Our cultural system's education, religion, even pop psychology often push a kind of emotional suppression disguised as enlightenment. Be zen. Be peaceful, but never powerful. Never disruptive. Never angry. Because a society of calm, compliant citizens is far easier to control than one that knows its rage is sacred. And here's where it gets darker. When anger is repressed, it does not vanish. It gets displaced. It turns inward as self-loathing. It festers as depression. It leaks sideways as sarcasm, passive aggression, sabotage. Or it bursts outward in ways you can control, hurting the very people you swore to protect. That is the price of disowning your fire. You do not become holy. You become hollow. And here's the paradox no one told you. Repressed anger makes you more dangerous than conscious anger ever could. A person who owns their anger, understands it, channels it, is powerful. A person who denies it, buries it, pretends it is not there, is a ticking time bomb. So now we must ask, what kind of life have you built around avoiding anger? What compromises have you made to stay nice? What truths have you swallowed just to keep the peace? And what has that peace cost you? Anger, at its core, is the emotion of boundary. It is the guardian at the gate. It says, this far, no further. It marks the place where self-respect lives. And when you silence it long enough, you start to forget where you end and others begin. That is not peace. That is erasure. So let us name the hidden problem, clearly and without apology. You were taught to hate your anger, not because it is evil, but because it made you powerful in ways the world was never ready for. And until you reclaim it, understand it, honor it, wield it, you will live in a cage with the door wide open, never knowing the key was in your own clenched fist all along. But we are not stopping here, because even deeper than this hidden repression is what it does to you when left unexamined. How it rewires your thoughts, sabotages your decisions, reshapes your reality without ever announcing its presence. You are about to see how the invisible cost of denied anger is far more dangerous than the emotion itself. It starts subtly, a tightness in the chest when you hear someone speak over you, a silent flinch when you are asked to take on more than your share again, a dry laugh at a cruel joke, followed by the echo of something inside you shrinking. You do not shout, you do not break things, you manage it, you call it grace, you call it maturity, you call it being the bigger person. But something strange begins to happen. Your thoughts no longer feel like your own. Your words stumble as if checked by an invisible censor. You find yourself watching life like a movie you did not choose, quietly wondering, when did I become a background character in my own story? This is the cost of anger unexpressed, not just buried emotions, but buried identity. Neuroscience confirms it. When emotions like anger are chronically suppressed, the brain does not simply let them go, it rewires itself. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and rational thought, becomes overshadowed by the limbic system, the part of you trained to survive, not thrive. You live in a state of subtle vigilance. Your nervous system, robbed of release, becomes a storm without thunder. Unpredictable, exhausting, quietly devouring your inner clarity. You do not trust your impulses anymore. You do not set boundaries with confidence, you ask for them like favors. You do not say no cleanly, you apologize for existing in the first place. And society rewards this. They will call you kind, selfless, easy to work with. But you know better. You are not at peace. You are just tired. Because here's the irony. The more you avoid expressing anger, the more your body carries it anyway. Tension in the shoulders. Chronic headaches, jaw clenched in sleep, stomach twisted for no clear reason. Psychosomatic studies have long linked repressed emotions, especially anger, to chronic illness. Not metaphorically, literally. The immune system weakens, cortisol levels rise, digestive disorders emerge. And while you treat the symptoms, the root remains untouched. You have been emotionally constipated for years. But it is not just your health, it is your choices. When anger goes unacknowledged, decisions become distorted. You say yes when you want to say no. You choose safety over truth. You sabotage opportunities just to avoid conflict. Cognitive dissonance creeps and your actions no longer align with your values. But you can't quite articulate why. You tell yourself, it is not the right time. Maybe I am not ready. I do not want to hurt anyone. But beneath those excuses lies something more honest. You are afraid that honoring your own fire will burn bridges you have spent your life building. Even if those bridges lead nowhere. Even if they have kept you small. You begin to build a life around what upset people, not around what sets your soul on fire. And this is where cultural conditioning completes its masterpiece. You are now a person who monitors their passion, who tempers their truth, who edits themselves mid-sentence, afraid of being too much, and no one even had to silence you. You did it yourself, but it gets even more subtle. You start to lose the ability to distinguish between anger that is sacred and anger that is misdirected. You lash out at strangers in traffic, but stay silent when your partner disrespects you. You argue on social media about politics, but avoid the real confrontation with the person who betrayed you last year. You cry in private over things you pretend do not matter in public, because the anger never went away. It just got scattered across moments. Relationships, and inner monologues like broken glass hidden in the carpet. And you keep stepping on it, wondering why your soul feels sliced open. Let us go deeper still. There is a kind of grief that comes with denying your own anger. A quiet mourning for the you who once roared. The child who once said no, without guilt. The teen who once raged against hypocrisy. The artist who once created without apology. They did not disappear. You just learned to silence them. But their voice lingers, like static behind every "I am fine." And that static becomes suffering. Existential suffering. Because you can live a full life while amputating the emotions that make it real. And here's the cruelest twist. Even your success becomes suspect. You climb ladders you do not believe in, win battles you did not choose, receive applause that feels hollow, because every step was calculated not from passion but from the fear of conflict, of rejection, of being seen. So you stay in relationships that drain you, jobs that bore you, roles that limit you, because the risk of confronting your real feelings, the rage, the disillusionment, the hunger is too great. You fear the explosion. You fear becoming someone else. But the truth is, you fear becoming yourself, the self you buried under years of being good, of being accepted, of being safe. And now, that buried anger does not just affect how you live, it defines how you do not. So we must ask, how many years of your life have been chosen by your fear of confrontation? How much of your potential is still hostage to the parts of you you were not allowed to feel? And what might happen if you finally let yourself burn, not to destroy, but to reveal what has been hidden beneath the ash? Because here is the brutal but freeing truth. Your life is already being shaped by your anger, just not in the way you think, not with fists or fire, but with silence, hesitation, and half-lived dreams. It is not the presence of anger that is dangerous. It is its absence from your conscious mind. Its unseen influence behind every almost, every maybe later, every I guess this is enough. But it does not have to stay this way. There is another path, a rebellion of consciousness, a way to face the fire without being consumed by it, to reclaim the sacred role anger was meant to play, as the force that says, I deserve more, as the fire that forges the new you. Are you ready to break the spell, to stop managing anger like a liability, and start honoring it as the fuel for your liberation? You were never meant to live this way, watching your passion rust into politeness, swallowing your truth to keep the peace in rooms that never earned your silence, applauding others while your own dreams gathered dust. But something is shifting now. The volcano you buried is stirring, and this time, you won't shame it. You will listen. This is the beginning of your rebellion, not a rebellion against others, against yourself, against the version of you that was taught to survive by shrinking. It starts with this truth. You are allowed to be angry, not as a failure of discipline, but as a declaration of value. Every time you feel rage flicker inside you, ask, what boundary just got crossed? What truth did I just deny? What wound is still raw and demanding to be seen? Because anger is a map, not a maze. It points to something sacred, your unmet needs, your disrespected time, your dismissed voice. But to follow that map, you must unlearn what the world taught you. You must reclaim the fire and aim it. Start here. Write a rage letter. Not to send, not to shame, but to see. Set a timer. No edits. No filters. No trying to be evolved. Let the fury pour out. Let your truth scream through ink. You will be shocked, not by how angry you are, but by how honest you have been, even in the storm. Next, stop apologizing for your standards. When you say no, say it without explanation. When you set a boundary, do not negotiate it. When someone crosses your line, correct them firmly, clearly, without flinching. At first, it will feel violent. That is because your nervous system has been trained to equate truth with danger. But that feeling, that trembling, that rising heat, that is not danger. That is power returning to its rightful owner. Then go deeper. Channel the anger, not into destruction, but direction. Ask, what do I need to build so I do not have to beg for permission again? What truth do I need to speak, even if my voice shakes? What version of me needs to die so the real one can lead? Look at history. Anger built movements. Anger tore down empires. Anger gave voice to the silenced, strength to the oppressed, fuel to the impossible. Harriet Tubman felt rage. Martin Luther King Jr. felt rage. Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Joan of Arc, Audre Lorde. Every person who dared to defy the silence felt rage. But they refined it. They forged it into clarity. They did not explode. They ignited. And so can you. Because here's the real rebellion. You stop waiting to be chosen. You stop asking to be understood. You stop diluting your truth for those who have no interest in drinking it. You reclaim your voice. You rewire your nervous system. You learn to stand in the fire and speak anyway, And yes, people will be uncomfortable. Let them be. Let their discomfort be the sound of old systems breaking. You are not here to fit in. You are here to wake up. So next time the anger rises, do not rush to fix it. Let it rise. Let it roar. Let it teach you. Because this emotion, once cast into shadow, is now your compass. It does not make you dangerous. It makes you dangerously clear. And clarity is the foundation of transformation. But this rebellion is not about becoming more angry. It is about becoming more honest, more whole, more alive. And when you no longer fear your anger, you no longer fear yourself, that is when you become truly free. And that brings us to the final, ultimate realization, the one truth that reframes every tear, every silence, every fire you ever feared. Are you ready for it? Then breathe deep, because what you are about to see will change everything. There is a silence that does not feel like peace. It feels like a funeral for your voice. There is a smile that does not feel like joy. It feels like surrender in a war you forgot you were fighting. And there is a life that does not feel like living. It feels like performance. Choreographed. Censored. Approved. But never yours. You were not born calm. You were born wild, loud, fierce. You wailed when hungry, screamed when hurt. You did not hide your anger, you used it to survive. But then the world taught you to apologize for that, to trade truth for acceptance, fire for comfort, power for peace. And now, after all these years, after all the swallowed words, the forced forgiveness, the polite smiles, you are left with a truth too large to ignore. Anger was never your enemy. It was your oracle. It was the signal that something mattered, that something sacred was under threat, that some part of you still believed life could be more. The ultimate realization is this: your anger was not the fire that burned you down. It was the light trying to show you who you really are. And maybe that is what frightened everyone else. Not that you were too much, but that you were never meant to be less. Because anger, when honored, becomes clarity, clarity becomes courage, and courage becomes destiny. This is not a call to rage blindly. This is a call to listen deeply, to trace the fire to its source, to sit with it, ask it, honor it. Anger says, something here needs to change. And now, so do you? You are not here to be calm while your dreams rot inside you. You are not here to be agreeable in the face of injustice. You are not here to smile while your boundaries bleed. You are here to burn beautifully, to let that fire light the path back to your essence. The version of you that does not flinch. Doesn't he beg? Doesn't he bow? The version of you that does not whisper truth, but speaks it into mountains. You do not heal by staying silent. You heal by becoming honest, fiercely, consistently, even if your voice shakes, even if it costs you comfort, even if no one else claps, because the applause was never the point. The truth was, and truth, when spoken with fire, becomes liberation. So now, you stand at the edge of your past, your programming, your performed peace, and you have a choice. Do you keep pretending your anger was a problem to fix? Or do you see it now finally as a gift? Because if you dare, if you truly dare, you will walk back into your life, not as a passive participant, but as a furnace of clarity, unapologetic, unyielding, unforgettable. The world needs that version of you, the one who does not fear their fire anymore, the one who remembers that anger was never the poison, it was the medicine. You just had to stop running from it long enough to hear what it was trying to say. And now that you have heard it, what will you do with the flame? Will you hide it again? Or will you build something with it that can never be burned down again? The choice is yours, and this time, it is real, it is yours, and it is on fire.